Welcome to another episode of In the Name of Service, a podcast committed to sharing the untold stories of those who selflessly serve. Each episode features an interview with men and women who have been called to a variety of service-focused roles, such as the military, law enforcement, ministry, volunteering, and more. You aren't likely to know the names of the individuals you meet here, but our hope is by the end of our time together, you'll not only know their stories, but possibly be inspired to write your own in some way. Humble in nature, but strong in character, these everyday men and women showcase what it is to truly be a servant. We're glad you're here. Now here's your host, Dr. Barb Thompson.
Thank you so much for joining me today for another inspiring episode of In the Name of Service. I'm your host, Dr. Barb Thompson. As a United States Army veteran and operational psychologist, I've spent my career working with military and law enforcement units conducting in-depth interviews with hundreds of individuals who are hoping to earn their place on high-risk, high-performing teams. In most cases, they've already put in years of grueling physical and mental work just to get a chance to serve and sacrifice more. And that type of selflessness is special and I feel worthy of recognition. While each person's story is unique and every path to service different, their goals are similar: to do something more, to be part of something bigger, to make a difference. These difference makers were the catalyst behind this podcast, and it's my privilege to share their stories with you. So today I get to introduce to you John Hamilton. You do have like a presidential name, but you're not the next president so far. I met you at a unit that we both were at in North Carolina. You're an operator there, and now you're out. I'm so excited to have you on today. Get us started. I won't even go into like your career field and all of that kind of stuff. I'll let you explain that because you're going to do it better than I can. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely, Barb. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so my name's John Hamilton. I grew up in South Florida, bounced back and forth with my parents basically my whole life. I was a dual sport letterman in high school. I wrestled and played football. And throughout my life, I always knew I kind of wanted to get into business. I didn't know what my path was going to be. And I think I call it after a series of unfortunate events, I actually ended up, looking for the military, looking at different aspects of the military. My dad was a Vietnam veteran, highly decorated. So I felt like I had to fill those shoes before I could go off into the world. And 13 years later, I was loving what I was doing. And now I'm a business owner. I'm out, happy, healthy, 2 kids, beautiful wife and family.
What did your dad do?
So he was, at the time, they called it a illuminator operator on the Spectre gunships. I think he hung out the back of the aircraft while they were taking fire and basically told the pilots to brake left or brake right to avoid being hit by by gunfire. So it was pretty crazy. I think he's got 4 distinguished flying crosses, 9 air medals. Pretty big shoes to fill.
Yeah. I'm already learning about you, John, because I didn't know that you had like this early desire to be in business.
Yeah, it was just always something, I always felt like it was something I would enjoy. And honestly, like, I think it was best the way I approached it with going into the military, because getting out, I was able to implement so many different aspects of the military, from organizational structures and roles and responsibilities into my business, which I think I never would have really learned, being if I had not had that experience. So
yeah,
it's really helped.
What do you think it was about your upbringing? You mentioned the influence of your dad, but what are a few experiences you think that shaped you into that type of person that could really go after something? Because you didn't just join the military, John. Like, you went all the way to the tippity top. You know what I mean? So that requires quite a bit of work and character that's not typically present in the average individual. So
it's hard for me to kind of articulate really, my path, because I think as a young individual, I didn't have the faith in myself to think that I would ever get to that level. My dad was, he fought Muay Thai, he did a lot of things. So I kind of had that rough and tough background and upbringing. And I always felt like, I had to kind of prove something to my dad. He was a doctor, highly decorated veteran. And so for me, it was after college, I I was really just bouncing around, bartending, doing all these pointless jobs with no aim or direction. I did go to fire school, thought I wanted to be a firefighter, and it was 2007 or 8 at the time, and there's nowhere to go because there's a big hiring freeze. And so I started looking around at different branches of the military. I looked at the Army first. I looked at the Navy and the Coast Guard. And as I learned more and more, I just knew I wanted to do something with helicopters and medicine. After talking to the Army recruiter, my dad basically told me, he's like, I don't think that's the place for you. I wanted to be a 68 Whiskey. Exactly what I wanted, right? Helicopters and medicine.
Right.
So then that went over to the Navy. I was looking into being like a rescue swimmer with them. And then I thought the Coast Guard would be good. Checked out them. And for whatever reason, I think I was in debt from college or something. And it was really hard to get in 2009. And I remember the recruiter for the Coast Guard basically told me, like, you're beat. Like, sorry, we can't do anything with you because you're $20,000 in debt, like 20 years old or 21 years old, whatever. So I was like, oh my gosh, my life's ruined. What am I going to do? Last resort. I never knew what a pararescueman was, never knew what a PJ was. I just walked into the Air Force recruitment office and I saw a poster on the wall, a guy on the beach holding his fins, a helicopter in the background, like, everything blacked out. And I was like, that looks cool. I want to do that. And yeah, off I went. And after a couple hours of research, after I, told the recruiter that's what I wanted to do, I was like, man, what did I just get myself into?
Let me just go ahead and do the hardest thing you have. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you already swim?
Yep. No clue. Yeah, I mean, I grew up, I was surfing. I surfed my whole life growing
Okay.
up. As I was on boats, fishing. So the water was no,
And your training pipeline, what is it? About 2 years?
yes. So basically start to finish, including basic training. You can get it done in about 2 years as long as, you don't have any setbacks or anything like that. I think most guys finish in about 26 to 28 months, depending on, how the pipeline flows. But 2 years to earn the beret until you get to even think about being operational in the military.
Did you ever second guess your decision?
No, I actually didn't. And I'm thankful for the way that everything kind of transpired, because when I signed up, I was in the DEP, which, there was a long period in the military back in that time frame, 2008, 2009, where there were so many people in the military that they were just purging. And then there was a wait list to get in. So I was in the DEP, which is called the Delayed Entry Program. So I had about 6 months, if I remember correctly, which gave me a lot of time. YouTube was up and coming at the time. So I'm looking up pararescue training, rescue warriors, Navy SEAL training, all this stuff. So I really I sold everything I had. I moved back in with my mom. I was bouncing at night, bartending kind of off and on, just to keep myself afloat. And every day from basically 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., I just trained Monday through Friday.
Wow.
I would go to the YMCA. I would swim. I would do calisthenics. I'd come home, eat, protein shake, all that stuff. Then I'd go to the track. I'd go run sprints, or I'd do a long, slow distance or sprints or whatever that was. And then, I'd finish up the day recovering, doing, physical therapy type stuff, stretching. And so really just built up my confidence in the pool, and I knew what I had to maintain to get there. I knew what the attrition rate was, and I just told myself that I don't have any other options. That's what it was. There was one option, and failure wasn't one of them.
Right. Right. I love it.
I think it helped. It helped. It gave myself no outs.
When I met you, you were literally at the top of your game, like the most elite, Air Force ground unit that we have. So what you're out now, looking back on that period of your life, that experience that you had in the Air Force, tell us a little bit about that. What really stands out for you now, kind of as you reflect on it? I
think the biggest thing that stands out for me is I hate to say indoctrinated because I guess in a sense you really are.
Yeah.
But for me, indoctrination is kind of a negative thing. But you're around high quality individuals, driven individuals. And for me, that just challenged me every day. Every day I felt like I was going to work, and it was game day. I had to perform. I had to be on time. I had to do the right things. I had to be there. And when it come to missing shots or, messing up a rope scenario, like I couldn't do it, because if not, I was going to get knocked off the board for my next rotation. And that's not what I was about, So I think that's what stands out the most to me. And I say that because coming back into the real world, I realize how much there is missing with accountability, without
Right.
with competition. And the only way I really feel like I ever got that, or receiving that fulfillment, when I was back in business, and
Hmm.
surrounding myself with other like-minded individuals that are business owners. And it just helps me to grow and stay on top of my mind, my game, my physical fitness, and all those things, so that I can continue to be good, be great. And now I just get to shift my focus from business, or from the military to business and my family, and get a lot of time back to my family that I felt like they deserved for all the holidays that I missed, being deployed and all those things.
Yeah. What stands out as being most rewarding from, just like, is there an experience or a life lesson you feel like has been, a great reward from the service that you completed?
I think I have a little bit of what they call operator syndrome.
Yeah.
So for me, it's difficult, and these conversations are always hard for me to have, because it's very difficult, I think, for somebody at that level to be fulfilled.
Yep.
We know what we're doing, we enjoy doing what we're doing. The accolades come with it, but at the end of the day, you get this piece of paper, or a Bronze Star, or what with Valor, whatever it is, and cool. And everyone wants to know what's going through your mind at the moment, and it's like
Hmm.
I was just doing my job. My job was getting shot at at the time, saving a patient or whatever it was. But I don't think there's really any fulfillment in that portion of it. But the fulfillment did come after the fact, with being able to shake that individual's hand, give them a hug,
Yes.
as they recovered, and stuff like that. And that's really what kept me going. And I guess you can even see it up here. Is our motto is that others may live, and
Right.
it was my goal to get those people back to their families, no matter what the circumstance was, and whatever the situation was. The guys left and right of me, they were my obligation. So I had to be at the top of my game, not only as an operator, whether I was going into a house shooting somebody, but I had to also be on top of my mental game to be prepared for that terrible situation where I'm taking care of those people, and there's no other option now. So I think that's really where the fulfillment comes from.
Right.
And as we talk to people outside the military, I guess for me, I'm kind of blind to it. And it's a blind spot for me, is people are like, oh my God, you're a PJ. Oh man, that's so cool. Blah, blah. And for me, I'm like, oh yeah, I was in the military. It was just a job.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's something I love. I'm very passionate about still. I still get the fulfillment from giving back to people. And part of the reason I think you and I connected was really just to be able for me to have these conversations for people that are out there that are suffering, trying to find that sense of fulfillment, because it's tough.
Right.
It's really tough once you get out and you lose that level of intensity and passion and drive, because you're sitting left and right of the most elite in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I can remember having other conversations with guys. You get to that point very early in life, where maybe whenever it is you learn about, this unit or that mission set, what you get to do there, you start working towards it, working towards it, working towards it. And it's like in your mind, this pinnacle. And then you get there. And like you said, it's like, it is terrifying because you're still not fulfilled. You're like, oh, I thought, like once I made it to this, like I would feel complete. But what you're describing is something outside of achievement that
Absolutely.
fills you up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it trickles down, whether it's business or life or whatever it is, it's, you really have to just dig deep and figure out your why, and focus on that. And I think a lot of things that have helped me now seek that fulfillment or get that fulfillment is, sitting down in the mornings and having my moments of gratitude. What am I thankful for? What have I accomplished? And really, having some introspection of, okay, where were you this time last year versus where you are now?
Yeah.
Tongue twister there. But, that really gives me the time to reflect, have the opportunity to be grateful, feel fulfilled, because you see how far you've come. Because I think us as operators, we're always so focused on what's ahead of us that we never look back.
Right.
And we never know where we came from, like going from a bartender to the most elite unit in
Right,
the world. Like
right.
for me, I never, we're always looking, all right, what's next? What's the next mission? What's your next objective?
Yep.
Who am I going to help? Where am I going to go? So yeah, it's really on you and how you frame your mind and how you take care of yourself to continue to have that fulfillment and, seek that inner peace that I think a lot of us struggle with.
Yeah. It sounds like what you're saying is like, it's a daily challenge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Speaking of challenge, when you're reflecting back on your military career, I know you faced plenty of challenges in the business world as well, but what do you think was your own personal greatest challenge during your time of service?
The biggest challenge for me, and I think I still struggle for this, is for whatever reason, I excelled very quickly in the military, not just on the special operations side, but I was a team leader within my first 4 years of being an operational pararescueman.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I don't think I was a staff sergeant select when I was deployed as my first team leader position to Iraq, where I was setting up the entire CSAR team for the entire country for Tier 1 operations. I guess I just had, I don't know if it was my old soul or what it was, but that for me was, I think, a huge challenge. And I don't feel like I ever fully matured to be that leader that I wanted to be. And I still struggle with leadership because I'm one of those people that I want to bring everybody up with me, but I want everybody to be on the same level, and you can't do that.
Right.
There's a sense of accountability and trust and all these things that you have to do. And that was a huge challenge for me. It still is to be, I feel like I am a good leader, but when I have people that don't fit the fold, like I don't deal with it. And, I think for me, it's still challenging to work on helping people grow and bring them up with me rather than just, all right, you don't fit the mold.
Right. You're off the
sometimes. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm actually listening to a book right now, which is kind of funny, by Tim Grover called Relentless. And, it seems like that is just how people operate when they're at that level. So Tim Grover, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he was Michael Jordan's life coach, personal coach throughout his career, Dwayne Wade. And at that level, you don't have any time to deal with the naysayers and the negativity and the people that don't want to rise with you.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's like, you're like always struggling. Oh, I want to bring these people with me, but I don't have time for them. How do I be a good leader?
Right.
How do I give them the opportunity? And then know when enough's enough. You're off the team or you fit the mold. Let's continue to help you grow.
Yeah. At the time, how did you deal with that being thrown into a role other people obviously felt you were ready for, but internally you were like, I don't know what to do with my hands? Yeah.
For me, it was really just embracing the elite leadership that was around me. And I'm grateful for that. At the 23rd STS, when I was up in Hurlburt Field, I had a lot of guys that actually came from the unit that you and I met at. So I had that experience from these guys that were, team sergeants now, master sergeants, senior master sergeants that were, on the brink of retirement, that I could really lean on and pull out these checklists and theater guidelines and learning all the rules and regulations and laws and all the things that I had to. So really leaning on them for that mentorship to help me build what I had to build. Because when I got out there, I didn't, I had a phone. I could call back to the jock and figure out what I could and, what my resources were. But that was the most pivotal thing for me is, I grew up with Ivan Ruiz, Air Force Cross recipient. And he's one of my best friends. And I'll never forget. He was also one of my indoc instructors, which is super cool. Like he watched me as a baby come into this, and then um, a couple years later, 5, 6 years later, him and I are on deployment together. And I was actually on the deployment with him. We were just stationed at 2 different bases when he got his Air Force Cross. So
Wow.
every night we were calling each other, hey, what happened? How'd your mission go? Blah, 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 blah. And I'll never forget when he told me about that, before he even received the accolades. But so with that, yeah, I mean, I'm just grateful for the opportunities and the people I was around to help mentor me and build me to figure out what I was doing as a 23, 24-year-old,
that's insane.
Staff Sergeant Select.
Can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to kind of transition out of the military at the time that you did?
I mean, for me, I was struggling with a lot of stuff. In 2013, I was, I went out with a ODA. I was with the 3rd Special Forces Group for about 6 months, augmented a SEAL team out there. We had it was a very, very dynamic deployment. A lot of explosions, a lot of death, a lot of destruction, and I was struggling. I had 3 herniated discs in my back, L3, 4, 5, and S1. They wanted to fuse it. I was dealing with TBI issues, and it was really weighing on me mentally and physically every day to be at the top of my game. Even though I was utilizing every resource that we had, whether it was from psych to dietitian to our strength coaches to our physical therapists, I had to lean on them every day to get me through the next practice. Right. And I found myself towards the end, I was attached to one of the teams, and I'll never forget, we were actually moving, funny enough. And I hired movers because I knew that I was not in a good position to be able to carry all this furniture by myself, which I'd never hired movers in my life at this point. After this move, I knew my back was kind of feeling weird, and I'd had constant issues, radiculopathy and numbness and tingling and all this stuff. We'd just gotten off a big exercise where I was bent over in helicopters with patients and stuff like that for hours and hours and hours. And after the move, I was like, man, my back just isn't feeling right. Something's wrong. And I was on alert. I was postured to blow out, and if anything happened. And I went for a run, came back to my new house. I went upstairs. We had a big room set up where I would do yoga and stuff like that, just to kind of get my stretching and everything. I remember I got up off the mat from doing yoga thinking it would help, and I stood up and I completely collapsed. I couldn't move. And I was basically, it was so painful to move for 8 hours. I couldn't do anything. I was stuck. Wow. And at that point, I called Doc Ballard.
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember him. And I was like, hey, I'm in a really bad situation, and I don't know whether I should go to the hospital or what. And so he came over to my house, checked me out, made sure that there was no immediate emergencies, and gave me a prescription and said, hey, rest for the next 24, 48 hours and then come see me. And so I think that was the most trying time, going from an elite level athlete per se, working out every day, running, running 625 miles, and then all of a sudden you're bedridden. So I really started looking at myself, the stuff I was suffering with mentally. And I was like, honestly, I think I'm more of a liability than an asset now, because the spinal doctor was telling me I needed to get fused. I had to just take that reality and sit on it and think about it. And so I went and talked to our psych at the unit, and she's like, John, I think it might be time to hang it up.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, no way. Like, I can't do that. I can't do that. I cannot. So it took me about 4 or 5 months of just recovering, being at the unit. I gave up my position where I was at to a guy on the team so that I could recover. And finally, I bit the bullet and was like, yeah, you're right. It's time to get out. It's time to move on to what's next in life. And it sucked. I mean, it was difficult, but a lot of it too, I think, was the political situation, to be quite frank.
Right.
Just a lot of changes in the military with all the new stipulations that are coming out, cutting funds and all this stuff. And quite honestly, I think I could say it now, but the Air Force was going through an identity crisis,
Yeah.
like with special operations, like whether it's a combat controller or pararescueman, there's a huge identity crisis of who we are, what we're going to do, and where we fit into the mold. I think the just accumulation of all these factors really just, said, hey, you know what? It's time.
Yeah.
I got a baby on the way. I got a brand new wife. We'd been together like 3 years at the time. So I exited. I went the medical retirement route, got 100% disability for everything.
And we knew, obviously, like my job was part of assessment and selection, and we knew physically, right? Like you had already put your body. Now that you've transitioned out, you're still the same individual. You know what I mean? Like you're still that same person, extremely driven to do big things in the world. But your team situation looks a little different than it used to. So what helps keep you motivated now, like during those tough days?
It's hard to say. For me, I think that business has been definitely one of the most challenging experiences that I've ever been in.
Yeah.
Because whether it's selection or assessment, like like, all right, it's either like 3 or 4 days and it's over, or 5 or 6 days and it's over. This, it's like every day is the grind, and every day, it's 3 years now. I'm in, and there's days that you're just like, dude, I'm so fed up with this. I'm so fed up with whether it's the economy, the financial situation, second guessing yourself whether the business is going to sink or swim, and it's tough. It's very tough. But again, I think I just have that no fail mindset. I can't let this fail. I won't let it fail. We're going to do everything in our power to get it to where I want it. And when I get it there, I'm going to start backing myself out and let the business run itself. So we're getting closer and closer. And it really just comes down to putting yourself around individuals that are of your caliber and that can run the business with you, so that you can work on the business, not in the business. Gives people that cutting edge of strategic growth is you have to work on the business, and I see guys in this industry specifically, like they're in the grind day to day. They're on the truck. So they're doing this, they're doing that. It's like, you got to hire and train, and you got to move out to the next position to figure out what you have to do to fulfill that path.
Yeah.
And truly being in a CEO position, because a lot of people own businesses. They call themselves a CEO, but they're the ones. And Robert Kiyosaki actually has a book on it. It's like the 4 quadrants. I forget exactly the name of the book, but the question in business is, if you die today, will your business run? If you don't have that, then you have a job, you don't have a business.
Yeah.
And that's the mindset that you put yourself in. All right, this is no fail. And this is what it was before. It's what it is now. And next, just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like a lot of pressure for sure, but also like you learn to take risk in your previous career. I think that's also, it seems like that's an advantage to you because just having that experience of like keeping the faith through the process, like if you continue to just show up and keep that big picture in mind and deal with the, the suck, as they say, then eventually, right, it's going to build.
Yeah. Well, it's like they say, like, if you can't always see the destination, but if you put one foot in front of the other, one day you're going to end up at the end.
Right.
So
begun to share some of your personal experiences, good and bad, kind of with a broader audience online, I would say. What was the catalyst like internally for you because that puts you in a really vulnerable position, it really opens up your private life and some of kind of the internal workings of John. So that can be a little scary. Anyway, what led you to do that?
I think as a culmination of things. One, I wanted to help others. That's the biggest thing. And I had people reaching out to me, that were struggling and thanking me for, sharing. Like, life's not rainbows and unicorns and balloons, it's
right.
Like, as business owners, we all struggle, and everyone wants to show the pictures of the fam and glam, but they don't want to show the pictures of the struggles and what it's like to actually be in the trenches. And I was willing to do that. I just thought it was a different angle. I think it's something that we all could relate to, because a lot of times I really felt like I was the only one struggling because of all my buddies with all these pictures of how successful they are and, their Ferraris. But at the end of the day, when you pick up the phone and you have these conversations, you're like, dude, I'm dealing with the same shit.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was a cool spin, like I'm a super transparent person. Probably it's too transparent sometimes. And now I've learned to kind of be more transparent about my feelings, just so I can be a better person, better husband. And yeah, so it's helped. I get that sense of fulfillment now because people reach out to me and they confide in me for certain things,
Yeah.
whether it's guidance or just to get them through the day. That's a sense of fulfillment I was seeking, and I was
Right.
rewarded by
Right.
offering that insight.
What do you
Yeah.
think in regards to you said it earlier, like you guys are out there, you're really putting yourself in a position to do incredible things and very scary things, very, very complex things as well, in the face of danger. Yes, it is the job that you signed up for. Even people that sign up for it don't necessarily do it well, but all of you guys, where we came from, you did. And then you mentioned kind of like the death and destruction and difficulties, the things that you saw in those experiences. What if you could talk to guys that are still in that position now? Do you think there are some things that you would advise them, like kind of where are we getting it right, where are we getting it wrong type of thing?
Man, there's so many different ways I could answer that question. From the operational perspective to, the personal development side to knowing when enough's enough.
Yeah.
Because we put our body through so much physical demand throughout their careers that I think a lot of guys, just to get through their day, end up suffering later on in their career. So for me, it's like, I think the biggest thing is you have to always put yourself first. And when you go into those workouts, instead of the mindset I'm going to war, like you need to put your mindset of like, I'm taking care of my body so I can be the best me. Because if you can't be the best you, then who are you to anybody else?
Mm-hmm.
If you're just deteriorating at the core, and you're still trying to help people, like really, who are you? What's your foundation? So it's very important to take care of yourself, physically and mentally, and being open to having those conversations in that dialect, whether it's the psych or it's other operators that are willing to have the conversations, to help ease your frustrations, ease your pain, or your challenges, and seeking that advice, and help to keep your mind clear and be the best version of yourself that you can be.
It's easier said than done. I'll just say that in that population, I think it's becoming more of a thing, like to just, to wear vulnerability a little bit better, knowing really what leads to growth, knowing really what leads to the best version of you at those highest levels. And I think, maybe a little bit downstream, you're still seeing populations where, just like you said, John, you went out to prove yourself. And that attitude, right, puts up walls versus what you're talking about is really like you're tearing down the walls. So I'll just say easier said than done.
Yeah.
But I totally wholeheartedly agree.
I think one of the other huge things that, it's preached, it's practiced, but I have a strong inkling that a lot of us with the endocrine system and adrenal system and everything else that happens throughout your career, the dysfunction that we end up having, I think it's a very common thing that we all have the anxiety and the depression.
Yeah. Yep.
And a lot of guys, I'm 100% guilty of it too, is once you're in the team room, we all rely on alcohol to kind of just let go a little bit, be able to have those conversations and open up and feel better. And, some days you just want to go home and have a beer. I never realized until I got away from that, how much it exacerbated the feeling of anxiety and depression that I was having.
Yeah.
And so just being able to, you learn yourself, you take 6 months off and you start drinking again, or you have a couple drinks and you feel how depressed and how anxious you are for like 3 or 4 days afterwards. it really starts to put things into a frame for you where you can be like, okay, maybe these feelings I was having at that time were obviously due to, the situation at hand, but what I was doing was I was drastically exacerbating these problems by drinking, and I didn't even realize it. For me, it was
Yeah.
like, all right, cool. I'm gonna have a couple beers. I'm gonna sleep good tonight because I don't freaking sleep.
Right.
And I'm gonna wake up good to go. But yeah, it's huge. I think that's one of the biggest things that has changed my life. And I mean, to be completely transparent here, with the laws changing and everything else, I started taking like the THC tinctures at night to sleep, and it's
Mm-hmm.
changed my life. I've never been a pothead or like never really liked like drugs at all, really, and so um, that was kind of a weird thing for me to be like, my buddy's like, hey, just try this, prior veteran, and I started trying it, and it was like I'd never slept. I don't feel like I slept that good since like high school.
Yeah.
After football practice, just deep sleep, waking up the next day feeling absolutely amazing, and ready to crush it and go after it. And if you just wake up so refreshed and clean, and your mind's clear, I think that that's something to heavily consider. When these guys get out or they're still in. Is just get rid of the booze and find something that's obviously legal. That you can turn to help, help yourself, meditation, whatever it is.
Yeah. And just, yeah, continue to have those conversations. I know there's a lot of things that keep us from sleeping at night, but when I showed up to the unit, the commander at that time, I said, like, I'm new here. What do you think is your biggest problem? And he was like, sleep. Our guys don't sleep.
Yeah.
And it just,
Yeah.
leads to every other bad thing, right? Like you're talking about, like you're just trying to live and work at an elite level, but you're not sleeping. Like that's gonna degrade you pretty quickly. So you reach out for these quick solutions that in the long run maybe don't turn out so well. So it's super, I think, important. Let's say someone listening to your story, they have like that urge, and it may feel like an urge to prove themselves, like to just do something, like bigger and better than what they're doing right now. They feel like that call to serve, but they don't know like where or how to get started. What would your advice be for them?
I think I see it in all aspects, and I think they call it analysis paralysis. People are just hesitant. They analyze things and overanalyze things. But the only way that you can ever make that first step is by making a decision and making a choice. So,
Yeah.
if you're on the fence about going to an elite level, or you're on the fence about starting a business or whatever it is, it's like you just got to do it.
Yeah.
There's sacrifices that come with it. Like, make sure you plan it appropriately. Don't be reckless, but you have to do it. And now I look back at the mindset when people get into like the employee mindset and stuff, and I was there. How hard what am I going to do? How do I do this? But surround yourself with people that are in the business that and learn as much as you can, but make the decision and put a timeline on it and how you're going to get there, and go after it. Don't wait for it, because at the end of the day, I knew it going up to North Carolina. It's like I never wanted to get out of the military with regret, knowing
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I could have tried it and I didn't. I just had to prepare myself, and obviously get authorization from my leadership, but I never wanted to do that. I never wanted to have that regret looking back, like, oh man, I wish I would have tried to go up there. I wish I would have gone to assessment. I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I didn't hesitate. I'm glad I took the steps, and I went to the level that I wanted to be at, and now it's something I get to look back at and be proud of.
Let me ask you this. I know I said that was my last question. This really is.
I'm
Um,
fine. You're good.
um, I love that. Like, just do it. You have to take a step. You have
Mhm.
to just like rip the band-aid off. I mean, have you always been fearless, John? Or do you think that's a barrier we all face, is that fear? Like, what keeps people from stepping out into?
I don't think I've always been fearless, but I think the more you practice it mentally, the easier that it becomes. Um,
Yes.
and and I find that, with now being in the business world, the more fearless I get, or the more times I surround myself with people that, of my caliber, the more opportunity that presents itself. It's like getting out of the military. I was in the real estate industry, moved from residential to commercial. And then from commercial, I got into moving, which, now I own the company. And, so every path leads to something bigger and better ultimately. And now I'm in the middle of developing a learning management system for the entire moving industry, which we're going to be selling internationally across the world. It's just these little steps that you take that present opportunity to yourself that you never thought was going to be possible. You don't just wake up and say, "Oh, I'm going to start the biggest software company in the world." No, but taking those small steps leads you to the next thing, and next thing you're 45 years old and you're like, "Holy crap." Just have faith, do the right things, plan accordingly, and grow. And if you don't, I see the employee mindset as like a cyclical thing. Like you get up, you do the same thing, and you're just in this cycle. You make the same money, you do the same things, you have the same patterns every single day, and it's like a hamster wheel. If you want to grow in life and in business, because ultimately I think after fulfillment, the other thing people seek is money. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be the person taking the hit when times aren't right.
Right.
Great sacrifice, great reward.
Thank you so much for your service, all you've done. I know we didn't get in it. I just want to thank you for raising your hand and then continue to do that for other people, outside of being vulnerable on this podcast, but taking the calls from your buddies. I think sometimes it's that stuff that no one ever knows about, that is makes the greatest impact. But anyway, thank you for your time today. Thank you for your service.
Absolutely, Barb. And thank you so much. If you guys ever want to get a hold of me, I'm on Instagram. My personal is at Invested in Real Estate. And then my company is Brooks Moving and Hauling. You guys can always reach out to me. I'm available. I've been on multiple podcasts, SoCom Athlete, a lot of other things. So I'm out there. If you want to Google it, there's a lot of ways to get a hold of me. So open to chatting with anybody. Awesome. I can help.
Yeah. And we'll put those in the show notes too, so that people can go and check out these other conversations that you've had and how to get a hold of you directly.
Absolutely, Barb. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for another incredible episode of In the Name of Service. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe. And of course, feel free to share with those you feel would like to be inspired. Have a difference maker in your life that you'd like to see featured? Reach out to Dr. Barb Thompson at inthenameofservice@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.